Welcome to our channel. I hope you're doing well. If you're here, it means you want to learn history in the most interesting way possible. And guess what? History is not boring. People just explain it the wrong way. But not today. Today, we're going to make history feel like a powerful, emotional, and unforgettable story. Previously, we talked about World War I, the war that changed everything. If you haven't watched that video yet, I highly recommend it because I explained everything in detail, making it perfect for your English listening and speaking practice. But today, we move forward to something even bigger. World War II, the most devastating war in human history. It was not just a war between countries. It was a war that reshaped the entire world. Cities were destroyed, families were torn apart, and millions of innocent people lost their lives. Countries that were once powerful were left in ruins, while new superpowers rose from the ashes. By the end of this video, you'll see why World War II happened, how it started, and how the world changed forever. This is not just history. This is the story of how the modern world was created. So sit back, focus, and enjoy this masterpiece. Improve your English, improve your knowledge, and most importantly, never let history be forgotten. The story of World War II doesn't start in 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. It actually starts much earlier, in 1919, right after World War I ended. World War I had left the world in shock. Millions of soldiers and civilians had died. Cities were in ruins. Empires had collapsed. The winners of the war, mainly Britain, France, and the United States, wanted to make sure Germany never started another war. So, in 1919, they forced Germany to sign a document called the Treaty of Versailles. One of the most controversial parts of this treaty was Article 231, also known as the War Guilt Clause. What did this mean? It meant that Germany had to accept full responsibility for World War I. Even though many other countries were involved, Germany was blamed for everything. But that wasn't the worst part. Because they were blamed for the war, they were also forced to pay massive reparations, $33 billion in those days, which would be around $500 billion in today's money. Germany was completely humiliated. The Treaty of Versailles took away huge parts of their land. Their military was almost completely destroyed, and their economy was left in ruins. Germany lost 13% of its land, including territories rich in coal and iron, which were important for their economy. Their army was reduced to only 100,000 soldiers, which was nothing compared to other countries. They were not allowed to have submarines, tanks, or an air force. They lost all their overseas colonies. Germany wasn't just defeated, it was crushed. At first, people thought this treaty would bring peace, but instead, it did the opposite. It made the German people angry, desperate, and humiliated. Imagine this. You're a normal German citizen. Your country just lost the war, but now the entire world is blaming you for everything. Your country is broke, your government is weak, and your future looks hopeless. Wouldn't you feel angry? Wouldn't you want revenge? When Germany was forced to pay a huge amount of money, $33 billion. Germany had already lost its best land and its industries. Their economy was weak, and they had very little money left. But the question is, where would this money come from? Germany thought they could solve this problem by printing more money. But this was one of the worst decisions in economic history. When a country prints too much money, its value drops. This is called inflation. And in Germany's case, inflation turned into something even worse: hyperinflation. To give you an idea of how bad things became, let me tell you a few unbelievable facts. Before World War I, $1 was equal to 4 German marks. By 1923, $1 was equal to 4.2 trillion German marks. Can you believe it? A loaf of bread that cost 1 mark in 1918 suddenly cost billions of marks in 1923. People had to carry wheelbarrows full of money just to buy food. Some people burned money instead of firewood because money was cheaper than wood. Employees had to run to stores immediately after getting paid because by the next day their salary would be worthless. And the worst part? Germany's last payment for World War I reparations was made in 2010. Yes, you heard that right. 2010. That means Germany was still paying for a war that ended almost a century ago. Because of this economic disaster, millions of people lost their jobs. By 1932, the unemployment rate was 30%, which means that almost 1 out of every 3 Germans had no job. Factories shut down, banks collapsed, and people became homeless overnight. Children were starving to death because their parents had no money to buy food. Germany was in complete chaos. The people were angry, frustrated, and desperate. And when people are desperate, they look for a savior. This was the perfect moment for a man named Adolf Hitler to enter the scene. In times of crisis, people search for someone who promises hope, someone who tells them what they want to hear. And Hitler was a master at doing this. Who was Adolf Hitler? Born in 1889 in Austria, a soldier in World War I, he believed that Germany had been betrayed by its own leaders. He hated the Treaty of Versailles and wanted revenge. At first, nobody took Hitler seriously. He was just another political figure in a broken country. But Hitler knew exactly how to manipulate people. Hitler understood that controlling people's minds was more powerful than controlling an army. So he used paid media, hate speech, and powerful speeches to spread his ideas. His strategy was simple. Find a common enemy and blame them for everything. He blamed the Treaty of Versailles for Germany's suffering. He blamed Jews, communists, and politicians for Germany's problems. He convinced people that Germany needed a strong leader to become powerful again. And guess what? People believed him. They were so desperate for a solution that they didn't care what Hitler's real plans were. Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in 1933. He didn't immediately have complete control. Germany was still a democracy. There were elections, political parties, and a parliament called the Reichstag. But Hitler had a plan. He didn't just want power, he wanted absolute control. He wanted to turn Germany into a one-party dictatorship where he could make all the decisions without opposition. But how do you destroy democracy from the inside? How do you convince people to give up their freedom without them realizing what's happening? Hitler was a master manipulator. He used fear, propaganda, and violence to achieve his goals. He convinced the people that Germany needed a strong leader, a Führer, to save them from their misery. And then, in February 1933, something happened that changed German history forever. On the night of February 27th, 1933, a shocking event took place. The Reichstag building, which housed the German parliament, was set on fire. Flames lit up the sky as the historic building burned, and people panicked. Who had done this? Who would attack Germany's government? The police quickly arrested a young Dutch communist named Marinus van der Lubbe. Hitler and his men immediately blamed the communists, saying this was proof that Germany's enemies were trying to destroy the country. But here's what many historians believe. The Nazis may have set the fire themselves. Why? Because this fire gave Hitler the perfect excuse to destroy democracy and take complete control. The very next day, Hitler convinced President Paul von Hindenburg to sign a new law, the Reichstag Fire Decree. This law suspended all civil rights, including freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of assembly, allowed the police to arrest anyone without a trial, gave Hitler the power to crush all political opponents. Overnight, Germany went from a democracy to a police state. Political enemies, especially communists and socialists, were arrested, beaten, or even killed. The people of Germany were told that this was for their own safety, that the government needed these powers to protect them from their enemies. But in reality, Hitler was eliminating anyone who could stop him. Then, just a few weeks later, Hitler took another step toward absolute power. On March 23, 1933, Hitler pushed a new law through the parliament, the Enabling Act. This law gave Hitler the power to pass any law without needing approval from the parliament or the president. This was it. This was the end of democracy in Germany. Some politicians tried to resist, but the Nazis used intimidation and violence to silence them. SA, stormtroopers, and SS, Hitler's elite paramilitary force, stood outside the parliament, threatening anyone who dared to vote against the law. In the end, the Enabling Act was passed. This meant that from that moment forward, Hitler could rule by decree. Whatever he said became law. There were no more elections. Germany was no longer a democracy. Opposition parties were banned. Only the Nazi Party was allowed. Hitler had done it. He had legally taken complete control of Germany. But he wasn't finished yet. Even though Hitler had power, he still had enemies within Germany. Some members of his own party, especially Ernst Röhm, the leader of the SA, stormtroopers, wanted more control. Röhm believed that the Nazi revolution wasn't finished, and he wanted more radical changes. Hitler saw this as a threat. He knew that as long as Röhm and the SA were powerful, his own position wasn't completely secure. So in June 1934, Hitler ordered a massive purge. In what became known as the Night of the Long Knives, Hitler's SS soldiers went out in the middle of the night and arrested or executed hundreds of people, including Ernst Röhm and other high-ranking SA officers. In just one night, the SA was completely weakened. All of Hitler's enemies within the Nazi Party were eliminated. The German army now fully supported Hitler. After this, there was nobody left to challenge him. On August 2, 1934, President Paul von Hindenburg died at the age of 86. This was the last obstacle standing between Hitler and total power. Instead of allowing a new president to be elected, Hitler made an announcement. The positions of Chancellor and President would be merged into one new role: Führer, leader of Germany. From 1934 onwards, Germany was completely transformed. The Nazi Party controlled everything: schools, newspapers, radio, and even churches. All books that went against Nazi beliefs were burned. Children were brainwashed in Nazi youth organizations, taught to worship Hitler like a god. Jews, communists, and anyone who opposed the Nazis were arrested or sent to concentration camps. Hitler had promised to make Germany strong again, and at first, it seemed like he was doing it. Unemployment dropped, roads and factories were built, and Germany's economy improved. But behind the scenes, something much more dangerous was happening. Hitler wasn't just fixing Germany. He was preparing for war. He secretly started rebuilding the army, producing tanks, planes, and weapons, all of which were illegal under the Treaty of Versailles. But Hitler didn't care about rules. He was planning something much bigger. Germany would not just recover. Germany would rise. Hitler had promised the German people that he would restore their honor, that he would make Germany great again. But there was only one way to do that: revenge. And revenge meant war. The Treaty of Versailles had placed severe restrictions on Germany after World War I. Germany was not allowed to have more than 100,000 soldiers in its army, build tanks, submarines, or an air force, place troops in the Rhineland, a region near France. But Hitler didn't care. He had no intention of following these rules. In March 1935, Hitler made a shocking announcement. Germany would rebuild its military, no matter what the world thought. This was the moment when Hitler openly challenged the Treaty of Versailles. He introduced compulsory military service, increasing the size of the army from 100,000 to 550,000 soldiers. Then, in March 1936, he made an even bolder move. He sent German troops into the Rhineland. This was a huge risk. If France or Britain had reacted strongly, they could have easily crushed Germany's small army. But guess what? They did nothing. France was dealing with its own political problems, and Britain thought, maybe if we let Germany do this, they will be satisfied and not cause more trouble. This was a big mistake. Hitler now knew that the world was afraid to stop him, and that made him even bolder. From 1936 onwards, Hitler focused on one goal: building the strongest military in the world. Factories were converted into weapons production centers. Germany began secretly building tanks, powerful Panzer tanks that could crush anything in their path. Fighter planes. The Luftwaffe, German Air Force, was born, with hundreds of planes ready for war. Battleships and submarines. Hitler wanted to challenge Britain's dominance of the seas. And most importantly, Hitler changed the mindset of the people. Through Nazi propaganda, he convinced Germans that they were the superior race, Aryans. Germany had been betrayed in World War I. They needed to expand their territory to survive. People didn't even realize they were being prepared for war. They were told that Germany was just defending itself, that it was only reclaiming what was rightfully theirs. Meanwhile, Hitler was looking for allies. He found one in Benito Mussolini, the dictator of Italy. Mussolini had also dreamed of rebuilding the Roman Empire and saw Hitler as a strong partner. In 1936, Germany and Italy formed the Rome-Berlin Axis, an alliance that would later include Japan as well. This was the beginning of the Axis powers, the enemies of the world in the coming war. Hitler's next move was Austria. He had always believed that Austria should be part of Germany, as they shared the same language and culture. But according to the Treaty of Versailles, Germany and Austria were not allowed to unite. Did Hitler care about that rule? Of course not. In March 1938, Hitler sent his troops into Austria in what became known as Anschluss, the annexation of Austria. The Austrian government did not resist, and Hitler was welcomed by thousands of cheering people. Once again, Britain and France did nothing. Hitler was winning without even firing a single bullet. Next, Hitler turned his attention to Czechoslovakia, a country that had been created after World War I. In Czechoslovakia, there was a region called Sudetenland, where many German-speaking people lived. Hitler used this as an excuse to demand that Sudetenland be given to Germany. The world was now worried. Britain and France knew Hitler was dangerous, but they still hoped they could avoid another war. So, instead of stopping Hitler, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain and other leaders met with him in Munich in September 1938. They gave in to his demands. This was known as the Munich Agreement. Britain and France allowed Hitler to take Sudetenland, hoping that he would be satisfied and stop expanding. Chamberlain returned to Britain and famously said, "We have achieved peace in our time." But Hitler had no intention of stopping. 6 months later, in March 1939, Hitler invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia, breaking his promise. Now Britain and France knew the truth. Hitler would never stop. The world was on the brink of war. As Hitler was preparing for war, he also had a secret strategy to make his soldiers unstoppable. In the late 1930s, Nazi scientists developed a powerful drug called Pervitin, what we know today as methamphetamine, crystal meth. This drug gave soldiers extreme energy. They could march for days without sleep. Superhuman confidence. They felt fearless, invincible. No hunger or pain. They could keep fighting even when exhausted. The German army distributed millions of Pervitin pills to its soldiers. They became unstoppable machines, pushing forward at terrifying speed. Even Hitler himself was regularly injected with drugs by his personal doctor. This was one of the reasons why the German Blitzkrieg, lightning war, was so fast and effective. By August 1939, Hitler was ready to launch his war. But he knew that if he attacked Poland, Britain and France would declare war on him. So he made a shocking deal with Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union. The Nazi-Soviet Pact was signed on August 23, 1939. It was a secret agreement between Hitler and Stalin to divide Poland between them. Now Hitler had nothing stopping him. On September 1st, 1939, at 4:45 a.m., German tanks rolled into Poland and planes bombed cities. The world watched in horror. 2 days later, on September 3rd, 1939, Britain and France finally realized they had no choice. They declared war on Germany. World War II had begun. And this is just the beginning. In the next part, I will reveal how Hitler crushed nations, how he shocked the world, and the one mistake that led to his downfall. The battles will be bigger. The destruction will be unimaginable. And the final twist will leave you speechless. Trust me, part 2 will be unforgettable. I won't make you wait long. I'm bringing it very soon. So stay tuned, because history is about to get even more shocking.